Hey, Cammy.
Hey Pat, how's it going?
Good. Can you believe that it's already the first week in December? It's just like,
I really,
wow.
I really can't believe it. Although as we were talking a little bit coming on here, it's feeling like, the days are getting shorter. I feel my energy levels are just dwindling. Like it definitely feels like winter now. So I feel that withdrawal this time of
Yep.
year for
Yep.
sure.
Yep. And then we have these holidays that we sell. That's interesting. I never thought about that. For those of us, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, this is like a more challenging time, especially where we have the four seasons and it's getting darker early, and it's just like the energy even in the five element theory. Winter is where we start going in, and you're like nature, right? They're burrowing in, and the squirrels have collected their stuff and making sure that they can hunker down for the winter. The bears are hibernating, and all those other critters that hibernate, the flying the fowl, all of these different things that they don't like the winter, they fly off, right? They're leaving because it's so cold. But yet then we have celebrations of holidays during probably the most difficult time for people
Yeah.
to do that. So yeah, so let's talk a little bit about um the upcoming holidays. We just went through Thanksgiving. And I know that that can be a super challenging time for because everybody comes together, and oftentimes Thanksgiving is a little bit different because politics can come into play and all these different conversations around the table. And so there's all of that. But when we're grieving, this time of year has, a lot of charges with it, right? And it can feel like there's landmines, and, where do you step so that not everything gets blown up. And there's fear, and there's just so much that are going on. So why don't we chat a little bit about that?
Yeah, I like it. And I like that. I like this idea of the seasonality that we kind of started with. Like, okay, the season of winter, that season of the withdrawal and the hibernation. And for me, my grief, like when my grief comes up, I want that hibernation mode. I'm someone who I like to withdraw and go inward. So I think this is super relevant for just speaking to the holidays with all the celebration and the joy, and it's like all of the events, and it's like I think for me, especially in when we're in that season of grief or when we're in that season of I want to hibernate and withdraw and rest, showing up to these big parties can feel really overwhelming, especially if we're going through the stress of grief, losing a loved one, especially if it's your first year without them. Like you have no idea what to expect walking into this celebration. So let's talk a little bit about that. Pat, I'm wondering if you have, just as with your experience with your own grief journey and with working with clients, what seems to be some big, like, overarching themes or areas that people might need support?
Well, I know that you want to talk a little bit about boundaries, but I think not so much boundaries, but making some decisions. Oftentimes people are being at, well, come on, we want to, we don't want you to be by yourself. We want you to be with us. We don't want you to sit by yourself. And sometimes the person who's grieving may want that, or they feel like, I need to show up. I think it's important that I show up. And so I've talked to clients. I had one particular client where it wasn't it wasn't a holiday like this, but I think we can go across the board. What we did at the time is she needed to go to a shower for her niece, a
Mm.
wedding shower. So for her to not go, she would have felt guilty and bad about that. Now it had been a few years since her daughter died. So she had an adult daughter who died from cancer. So it had been a few years. And she was like really stressing out because she didn't like to leave her house since her daughter died. So for a couple of years, she really did go in deep and kind of like just wanted to cocoon in where she felt safe. And because every time that they talk about it or she'd get into something, she just felt like she was going to be Humpty Dumpty and break into a bazillion pieces. So, but this is one that she felt like she needed to go. She needed to honor her niece and her sister, who is the mother of the bride, that type of thing. So we talked about how do you prepare for it then?
Mm.
What happens if all of a sudden you feel like you're going to have that meltdown? That we know grief can come very unexpectedly. So we actually prepared what that would look like for her. And we used the concept in our breathe model of the tribe. And so it was, who is the person that you think would be the best person to be your wing person, to be the person that can keep an eye out for you, that you can give a signal to, whatever, and agree upon that signal and, graciously remove you from the situation so that
Mm.
you can go. And so she did. She had a sister that she was very close with. She came up with a whole plan of how, she would have a sign to her sister. Her sister could then take her out, take her out to the deck because it was like summertime at that time, and just let her get away so that she wasn't breaking down in front of a lot of people, because that would have been so much worse for her to
Mm.
have a meltdown in front of everybody. And so that was, that's an example. And I think the same thing holds true with these kind of gatherings. But I know you also talked about, how it felt for you, and do you even go? And so do you want to talk a little bit about like the whole boundary thing that you had shared?
Yeah, sure. So for me, Christmas Eve tends to be challenging for me because back before my dad died, Christmas Eve was like his whole side of the family. We would go and celebrate with them. And I have memories of my grandma playing piano. Like they were just a family full of musicians and artists, and it was very lively. And I just have a lot of fond memories with that time of year. And then my parents got divorced, and then my dad died, and now I hardly see my dad's side of the family. So last year, a lot of that just came up for me on Christmas Eve. And I ended up just sitting. My dad had this little Christmas tie that sang a little Rudolph song and it lit up and whatever. And so I had that, and I just like sat with my dad and I was just reminiscing with my dad's urn. And I just was reminiscing on Christmas Eve with them. And of course I was just deep, like allowing the grief and the sobs to just come out of me. I was in no way like in shape to go out into the world and be with
Right.
family, especially because I wasn't going to gather with my dad's side of the family, and I was really craving that connection with him and his family. So for me, there was a ton of grief. And um, I was reaching out to a family member who was expecting me to be at this gathering. And I really told them that I just wasn't up for it. I'm having a grief burst and I just need to sit with it. And they said, I totally understand, but, and then pressured me to still show up. And I just remember feeling so unsupported in that moment. Like, I'm telling you that what I need right now is to be alone and to have my grief and to cry and to remember all of these past celebrations and to really yearn for what I'm missing right
Hmm.
now. That was my way of honoring that, was just just sitting with all of this. And for me, I know I need to do that and let it pass before I can go out. Otherwise, I'm just going to be choking it down and I'm not going to be any fun. So I just think that setting those boundaries can be so important when it comes to these kinds of celebrations, because, like you said, like our family members or people in our life might really think that what's best for us is, well, just come on, be with the family, just show up. They might pressure you and have these expectations of what they think the best holiday should be, or how they can try to cheer you up in your grief, and all of these, yeah, just these expectations of what the holiday should look and feel like. And then as a griever, if we're not meeting those expectations, people don't often know what to do about it. They might, I think that conversation can be tricky to have. So thinking about, how can you identify what you need for yourself? For me, I knew that I was in no place to go out and be with family. I just needed to be with my grief. Um, but to identify like what is it that you best need right now to support yourself, and to really honor that, despite what the expectations or what other people might want from you. To me, that was just really important. And there's nothing wrong with spending the holiday if what you really
Yep.
need is to watch this movie again and again because that's what you and your spouse did on holiday, and you just need to be alone with that. For me this year, I'm not spending Christmas with family. I'm actually going into that hibernation mode and just kind of spending some time, just me and my partner hunkered down here. So I'm taking a step back from that hustle and really just honoring that winter and that stillness. And I think grief is a beautiful base in that winter and that stillness to sit with that and honor that. So I just want to advocate for people. If you feel like skipping the holidays because that's what you need, then absolutely, and I think coming up with some kind of language or way to express your needs to your family or friends who might be expecting you there can also be a nice way to plan.
Yep. And I'm just thinking as you're talking too, so you might not, let's say that you're a parent and your spouse died and it's like, I can't do this. I just can't do this. But you may have children. And so then it's like, okay, how might you be able to make decisions that are in the best interest for everybody? So at grief camp, I remember one year, and he was like a young adult, and he got up and he was talking on one of our panels, and he said, my mom wouldn't go. But then she made us stay at home with her, and it was depressing and sad. And honestly, we would have liked to gone to grandma's or to the aunt's house. And so he just encouraged the parents that were in the audience, like, think about that too. We would have been fine if mom wouldn't have come. We understood that, but it also would have been nice if we would have had the opportunity to go. So,
Yeah.
so for those of you who are listening, you know, think about if it's your family and your grief, what might the children want? Have those conversations with them, right? What
Mm.
would you like to go to Aunt Sally's and Uncle Joe's, for the family gathering? It's okay if I'll be fine, if that's what you want to do and spend some time there. Or if you're a family member, to offer that up. So if your sister-in-law is sitting there and grieving the death of her husband, maybe offer, could we take the kids? Would that be helpful for you? And actually give the kids an opportunity to maybe make some decisions regarding that, because they're at a different developmental place, and that may be something that helps them in their grief to have a little bit of that normalcy, but oftentimes they want to protect their parent, and not
Mm.
make them any sadder, right? So
Yeah.
there's kind of a twofold, just kind of understanding from where everybody's at, because as we know, your grief is as individuals, your fingerprints. And so if I'm the grieving spouse, my grief is very different than my children grieving the death of their dad. And
Mhm.
how do we handle that within the holidays? So I think that's really beautiful, and to advocate for yourself. That's what you're
Mhm.
talking about. And that's super hard, to be an advocate for yourself. So how might you find someone? I'm going to go again to, like, finding your support system. Is there someone in your support system that you could lean into and say, I really don't think I can handle this. Can you help me pave the way to
Mm.
have that conversation with my family? That I don't want to come this year, and has nothing to do with them. It's the right thing for me. And see if you can
Yeah.
find that, gather that support, right? Versus being guilted into it. Because when we're fragile and grieving and all of that, you may not be the strongest advocate for yourself, right?
Mhm.
And so finding someone that can help you be an advocate is also very helpful. So I think this is the time. Now I'm just kind of going, it's like, this is the time of year, find your people, but not the people that are going to suffocate you with, you have to be around people. Find the people that understand and can be your support, and allow you, if you want to hunker down and be, cocooning into your own, and, get in your own memories, and cry your eyes out and just, slobber all over the place. Find the person that will support you in doing that. They don't need to be
Yeah.
with you, but they can help pave the way with other people who may be unintentionally pressuring you to do something that you just don't feel
Mhm.
is helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. And like you mentioned too, on the other end of the spectrum is, the people who really do want to go to the holiday, but they're terrified because, their person's absence or their grief is just so loud that things feel overwhelming. Everything feels like too much, because we know that when you're deep in your grief, our capacity for life just diminishes. It's so much
Right.
harder to think or to do anything. So if you're someone that's like really wanting to be around family and to celebrate, and that's comforting for you, then yes, absolutely find that support from your tribe or from other people, or ways that you can advocate for yourself to know your limits and to know, what does feel good for you, and then to drop the rest. If it's really too much to do all of the gift shopping and on all of that this year, maybe there's something else that you can do, besides giving gifts to everybody. Maybe you can spend some quality time together instead, if that would feel better for you. Or maybe you don't have the capacity to cook a meal and then drive yourself to the holidays, or someone that could be able to pick you up on the way, so that you don't have to worry about, driving if you're going to just be exhausted later that night.
Yep.
Or other ways that you might be able to make the holiday more supportive or comforting. I really love the idea of ceremony and ritual and honoring practices, especially around these events that are already so special to us. How can we
Mhm.
incorporate and honor our grief and the memory of our person into that celebration? So I think, something like saving a spot at the table for them, to just call out that this person is not here and we miss them. And maybe you make a toast in their honor, or you share a memory, or you light a candle, or you have an altar with a couple photos. I think there are so many ways that we can integrate our grief into the holiday, rather than keeping it separate. Like there's pressure to
Mhm.
not have grief in your holiday, or in your family system, or whatever it is. If that's really the place, and that just, if your holiday and your family dynamic does not feel supportive of integrating your grief into the holiday celebration, then maybe it would feel better to separate that a little bit and to stay home if that's what you really need. But for me, I think if our support system um on can be on the same page with us about, wow, this would be really special to me if I could remember this person or share a memory with the family, then I think that can be a really awesome way to make the holiday just a little bit more comfortable, and to call out the elephant in the room too. I think some people know that it sucks, and people know that there's a lot of grief in the family, especially if it's the first celebration without someone, and oftentimes people just don't name it, or they don't
Right.
acknowledge it, and then it's like, you're over here pretending to be happy or drinking a bunch of wine to try to just stifle it, and that just does not work either. So that's a delicate balance to figure out what's really gonna work for you on that day. And I think, yeah, having some prep time ahead of time, finding your people, deciding what your boundaries and your limits are going to be, and whatever you decide to do, having people that are going to support you, and then having an exit strategy too. I think if you show
Mhm.
up and it's, just kidding, this is too much, I really can't do this right now, or you go into that meltdown and just need to remove yourself, then how can you set up those support systems in place? Someone to drive you home, or a friend to come sit with you while you cry it out
Right.
and can return to dinner, or
Right.
whatever it is that you feel like you need. Prepping and just thinking about it ahead of time, I think, can really go a long way to make sure that there's not so much anxiety or fear around the celebration.
Yep, yep, and I think that's the main thing, and the main thing that we want people to walk away with is preparing yourself, and that's the last thing you're probably thinking about in your grief is preparing yourself, it's like, "What's this gonna look like?" But again, you have the power. It really is up to what you know what your bandwidth is as a
Mhm.
grieving individual, and you know whether you can do this or not. Like the client that I was talking about, she knew she had been hiding out from any kind of family gatherings for a couple of years. She knew that that was panic attack situation, right? So having for us to be able to prepare her for this event that was coming up made a world of difference because she was able to go, she was able, and I think even just talking about it alleviates some of that, oh, anticipatory stuff, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna freak out and become Humpty Dumpty, and then no one's gonna be
Mhm.
able to bring me back together. I'm gonna sob my eyes out, and oh my God, everybody's gonna be staring at me, and I'm gonna have to run
Mhm.
out of the room, all of that type of thing. But just talking about it and having preparation actually can calm down those fears, and then
Mhm.
they may not even show up. You may be able to go and have a calm, nice time with the family, if that's what you choose to do, because you prepared for it and you
Yeah.
prepared the other people in your life for it. So I think that's
Mhm.
probably the biggest thing that we can really persuade people to do during this time of year is the preparation. And it doesn't take
Mhm.
months of preparation. You and I just decided 2 weeks ago, let's throw out the opportunity for people to actually have a little grief retreat online to do this preparation type thing, to honor their grief, to actually take our breathe coaching model for grief and actually integrate it in just a short weekend with lots of
Mhm.
breaks and that type of thing, but to actually help people prepare.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm so excited for that space because it's going to incorporate a lot of what we just talked about, gathering your tribe, finding the right people that are going to support you in this, having an honoring practice, a ritual or a ceremony that feels good for you if you're grieving the death of someone, to recognize them and to honor that. We talk about having a vision for how your holidays are going to go instead of that panic attack, anxiety ridden space. What might the best possible if the holidays could go smoothly, what might that really look like for you? And how can we make sure that we're setting that up for success ahead of time? I think there's so much, there's a tendency in grief, and especially when things get overwhelming around the holidays and when life gets busy, to try to shut our grief out and to run away from it and to distract from it and to numb ourselves from it, to just power through. And that seems to be like the plan for the holidays, is to just get through it and forget about it as much as possible. But I mean, we're both advocating for the preparation and having these
Mhm.
conversations ahead of time, because we know as coaches, and we've seen this with our clients again and again, just the power of addressing these things ahead of time can really make a world of a difference when it comes to honoring a grief and taking care of yourself and making sure that these events go as smoothly as possible. So I'm so excited to
Yep.
offer this support for people.
Yep, yep. So just so people are listening, we're gonna get this video out as quickly as possible, but we do just reach out to 𝒂𝒉𝒄 and we'll get you hooked up because we're actually starting it on Friday evening. And just a few hours on Friday, just kind of to gently, ease into it. And then Saturday, again, having lots of breaks in there, but just doing some really good um, activities and learning some of the tools and diving into some resources to really help support, and then ending Sunday morning actually with a beautiful kind of a ritual, a beautiful ending of this time together because you deserve that. And maybe that's all you do for your Christmas. Maybe that is your, or whatever holiday that you do or do not celebrate, but maybe that's the gift to give yourself. Or if you're
Mm.
someone who's watching that you have a loved one who's grieving, maybe that's the gift you give them. Maybe that's the holiday gift that they need, is just to have this time to themselves, because what else are they going to be doing over this weekend coming up into all this holiday fervor, right? Probably feeling really bad sitting around, and maybe this way you can be with people who are going through the same things. And and I are there to just help love and support and find the way to kind of just get through this, because it's just kind of getting through day by day,
Yeah.
these holidays, and we know how hard it is. So, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'll put the link in the description down below so that people have more information on the details with that and can register if that feels something that will be supportive for you or for someone that you know. And then, of course, beyond that, we're here for all the support. If you feel like you need the one-on-one support as well, we're available for that. So I hope this was helpful. I hope this outlined some tips and tools and tricks to navigating the holidays. And of course, there's so much more to explore. But if you have any questions or comments, list them below in the video. And of course, like us and subscribe and let us know what else you'd like to see on this channel.
One more thing I forgot to mention. So in our class last week, someone who is a mom who experienced the death of her daughter, someone gave her a jigsaw puzzle, her family. So they just put it out on a table. And she said that jigsaw puzzle, especially right before bedtime, was just everybody would just go at their own pace and then maybe just spend a little time, like trying to put a few pieces of the puzzle together. I just thought, wow, wouldn't that be a cool idea at your family gathering? Have a little corner where you have a table and a jigsaw with the pieces laying out so that, holidays can be stressful and it can just like be a place to go and maybe allow the mind to relax a little bit amidst all of the people around. Or if you're at home, having something like that to just, go to as a little way to kind of get the mind on something else. But she said that this was so powerful for her and her family that now every time she knows someone who has experienced the death of a loved one, she gives a jigsaw puzzle with a
Mm,
condolence card because she
mm,
knows how powerful it was for her family. So another little tip going into the holidays is maybe have a jigsaw puzzle available at your
mm.
holiday gathering or if you're
I
home
love that.
alone. Yeah, yeah. I thought that was great. I love learning from the people that come into our programs because we're always the students, and I thought that was a lovely, lovely idea to help really calm the mind. So
Mm.
just wanted to throw
There's
that out
always
there before we
always so much wisdom to share.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, well, we know that there's lots going on, and I thank you for taking the time. It's been busy just coming out of the Thanksgiving weekend here in the US. And we'll just get this out as soon as possible. And we hope that maybe we can see some of you this weekend at our retreat.
Cool. Thank you, Pat. Thanks everyone for listening.
You bet. Bye bye.